Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield with Manny Things, and welcome to another episode of Manny Talks Shooting, the show where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you enjoy this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Things. Without further ado, let's get to this episode. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Manny Talks Shooting. It's been a long month since we've had an episode. I want to apologize to everybody. I needed a break. Life got busy, work got stressful. So I just took a break and we're back now. We have a great episode planned for you today. Today, I'm sitting down with Mike Shatalov of Area 8, if I'm correct. Mike,
and area, we're still kind of sort of in Area 7, so.
you're on the border, aren't you?
I'm right on the border, yeah. So I'm still a resident of New York and I'm a resident of PA, so I'm going to have to make a decision at some point when it matters.
Well, Mike, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
Guys, Mike is a GM in production and carry optics, and we're going to have a good time today. How I found you is you actually emailed me, which was kind of cool. Thank you for being the first person to email me about coming on, which is fantastic because I needed that revigoration of wanting to put out a show, so it kind of helped. But guys, Mike's going to have some great knowledge for us today, so we'll get cracking. So Mike, most of my shooters probably don't know who you are. So who are you and how did you get into shooting?
So yes, I'm a grandmaster in production, carry optics. I got into shooting as a little fun time activity with my wife. We shot a local action pistol match at a local club, which was just 2 hits on Brown. And I think I shot a Glock 26, which was my second pistol that I bought. I was in my mid-40s already at the time, so my eyes were still okay, but not so good. But it was 4.5 years ago, I think. And then there was a local IDPA match that I went to and shot that match. Discovered that there's actually a scoring involved, that you actually need to hit the center of the target rather than just 2 hits on paper. And then I found out about USPSA, and luckily we had a couple of local matches in the area. Jumped on the squad with my friends, shot that match, and fell in love with it. I think like after the first or second match, I joined USPSA, and I've been shooting it ever since. It didn't take me long. Then I started a C-class shooter in limited 10. I literally did not know anything about classifications or divisions. Showed up to a local match with my Glock 21 45 ACP. That was the very first pistol I've ever bought. And like, what division are you shooting? I'm like, what do you mean division? I'm like, what gun are you shooting on? Glock 21. They look at me like, limited 10, because I'm in New York. Mm-hmm. So I shot that match as limited 10, and I shot it for a little while, about 4 or 5 months, until I bought a 9mm strike hammer fire. I think it was a CZP-09 is what I bought, and started shooting production. Won a local match, got a B classification, got interested in training, and just I think it was 45, 44 at the time, and I'm like, listen, I don't have a whole lot of time to waste. If I was in my 20s, like I could watch these YouTube videos and do this and try that and make some wrong turns on the way, but I didn't want to waste any time. Like I knew I don't have a lot of time, so I found the Anderson program. Well, I think we bought his book, and I started training. Then I discovered the Ben Stegger's dry fire program. Started dry firing. Made A class, I think 4 or 5 months after that. Made master 4 or 5 months after that. Went to the nationals my first year of shooting. 2018 as a B class. I think placed like 60% or something like that. But ever since I started shooting production, like I stepped on the path to mastery. And honestly, I feel about shooting like it's a martial art, and I think that's why people with martial arts background do really well. They understand the value of training, the value of repetition, the value of discipline. I'm not a martial artist by any means, but this is a martial art. So people that are practicing with their handguns, I mean, it doesn't get any more martial than that. So the path to mastery, the path to being able to use your firearm really well, started for me early in this game. And so luckily enough, I had the right tools in place, and was able to get to a reasonably good level. I placed top 10 at the nationals earlier this year, and I won an area 7 in production. So still training, man. Still feel like I'm not quite there yet. Carry Optics National was coming up, and I was studying the matchbook, and I'm like, there are a few things I'm going to have to practice in the next couple of weeks to make sure I'm ready.
Speaking of the matchbook, I looked at the matchbook yesterday as well. I think it came out yesterday or maybe the day.
Yeah.
But some of the stages looked interesting. I feel that some of the stages are going to be very interesting for carry optics shooters because this looks like some really far shots through ports and really hard leans.
Yeah. Did you see that one? So, of course, there's always going to be critics. Too much standing shoots. I think it's a nice mix. I haven't studied too closely, but I don't look at the pictures as much as I look at the descriptions, the starting position, maybe types of targets. And there was three stages specifically that I kind of singled out. So one was the last three targets must be engaged weekend only. And if you look at the diagram, I'm like, like there's no good spot to end in where you can, like, it's either going to be a super hard lean with your weekend if you're a right-handed shooter, or is it going to be far targets on the left, or is it going to be a swinger and steel in the middle? So, that's an interesting kind of curveball there. Then holding a thing in your hand while shooting targets. So we're going to game that. We're going to hold it between our legs probably and shoot a couple of targets like that and then start moving. I don't know.
Probably.
And then there was another one. That was the other one, the stand and shoot, where it was 2 strings and it's strong, reload, strong, and then weak, reload, weak, which is, we don't really practice that, right? So I'm going to have to practice, how do I reload from weekend into weekend? Do I transfer the pistol?
Did you happen to see Eric Steiner's video last night?
No.
Wow. He's insinuating he has his magnet on the front and he sticks his big stick like straight up, like what you'd expect it to be. And he just brings the gun down and be like, well, we're good.
I don't know. Listen, that's not going to be the stage that's going to lose you the match, but probably not going to win you the match. But I'm not going to spend too much time practicing that one little thing. Whatever feels comfortable, even if I lose a second, just be safe. Because I don't want to have any unforeseen scenarios there.
I know that Jay Beal will be ready for it.
I'm sure.
He's always doing crazy stuff like that nobody thinks of, but
it's going to be a crazy match, man. There are a lot of high-level shooters in that match, and I think there's like 300 some people in carry optics.
Yeah, I believe
70
so.
grandmasters, 45 masters. It's like ridiculous. The heat is going to be on.
Well, and have you looked at squatting at all for that match?
I did, yes.
Where like the super squad, it's not really the super squad.
Yes, I saw that, and I have my own theories on that, man. But because I mean, Max and Mason and who else?
JJ and Phil.
JJ, Shane, yes, they're all on a different squad, and those are the real contenders for the title. Like, as much as I think the other guys are tremendous shooters, I think anybody who's like in the 90% or higher is just killer. But realistically, 90% is not gonna, like, you're not really running. You may be aspiring, you may be trying, but like 90%, you're not even close to winning the national title.
Oh yeah.
So on the real super squad, there's maybe like 5 people in my mind. I may be wrong, but in my mind, there are 5 or 6 people maybe that are truly capable of winning that match, and the rest are just they're filling in the squad.
Yeah.
Maybe next year they will, or maybe not. I might be wrong.
We'll see. I mean, this is the biggest stacked field of carry optics we've seen since they didn't have production with carry optics again. I really don't agree with PCC and carry optics because they're totally, completely different platforms. Here's my opinion, and it's just my opinion, so everyone can take it for what it is. I think PCC should always be at standalone nationals because there are things that you need to test on you can test on a PCC that's not quite adequate or fair enough for pistol shooters. And then I say you put carry optics, limited, and open all in one nationals, and then you have a 3-division nationals.
I think that's a reasonable thought, man. Quite honestly, a rifle at a pistol match. I mean, that's smart. If you think like, listen, I'm bringing a rifle to a pistol match, I'm going to win. That's you're giving yourself every option, but it's not always the case. There are different points of view as far as how many nationals can you have, what divisions can you combine. Everybody has an opinion. The practical result of that is not always as easy to accomplish. A lot of people like the 9 days of nationals, I kind of sort of like that as well. That was actually my first nationals. A lot of people like, an all-inclusive nationals where everybody shoots against everybody, whatever division,
Mhm.
But what if you want to shoot multiple divisions? What if you want to shoot carry optics and production? You kind of sort of left out.
Yep.
So it's not an easy situation, but PCC is recognized by the international sports, and we like people say you got to get rid of PCC. I'm like, but we're sending guys to compete at the world level, so it's a recognized division at IPSC. So why would we cancel it? You may not like shooting it, but it's a legitimate division.
Yes, it is. And then I don't, like I said, as long as they're able to test the PCC to its full potential is what I'm for. Now, here's another idea. If we keep two gun nationals, we could host two gun nationals and PCC Nats, kind of like as a back-to-back format.
Yeah.
So then you're just adding in the pistol for the second half of the match. Oh, essentially second half of the match, really. And because they kind of did that in 2020 with multi-gun nationals and PCC nationals. That's a thought.
Well, listen, honestly, part of the mission of USPSA is developing, new practical shooting sports. It doesn't have to be just USPSA. If USPSA is to grow and develop some of these sports, and like Steel Challenge was a separate sport in the past, right? Multi-gun was a separate thing. Three-gun nation was kind of sort of a big thing, but then it kind of sort of disappeared. So multi-gun is now part of USPSA. A lot of folks that are only shooting pistols, they're purists, and they don't want to see those other sports being introduced. But if USPSA is to grow in that mission, because if you look at this mission statement, they do want to grow other practical shooting sports. They don't have to compete within the USPSA, pistol part of it. There could be different organizations or different committees, or the structure could be finalized or defined. But I don't like, if people want to shoot two gun nationals, like, why not host it? Why not have it? If there's a venue that we can find, and people like, there's clearly a lot of interest, and a lot of top guys are shooting it. So, and it doesn't have to be a top guy. Anybody who wants to shoot multi-gun, three-gun, two-gun, whatever. I don't see why USPSA couldn't provide a platform for that.
Absolutely. I mean, we are the dominating pistol game or practical shooting game in the United States. I mean, IDPA, they can't hold a candle to us. Everyone is shooting USPSA comparatively to IDPA. I think we have almost double their IDPA's membership, I think. Last I knew, there were like about 18,000 members.
Yeah. What's interesting is, in other, so USPSA is part of the IPSC region. We are our own organization, but at the same time, we are also part of the international organization. In other countries, their presidents or their regional directors, they are more or less in charge of all of the shooting sports across the board, because the countries are much smaller. The membership is a little bit more, I don't want to say elite, but like, the gun rights are different in other countries, so people who can't afford to get a license or to own a gun, a handgun, a rifle, are, either in the military or in the police or politicians. So the person who's in charge of IPSC is generally the person who's in charge of all the shooting sports across the board. He or she helps with the laws, with the actual government, federal, state laws, and they need to have a sporting purpose to even own firearms. So their regional directors, their presidents of their organizations are very strong politically within the government structure. So their sporting associations are much more involved with the government than we are. So
well, like
there is no monopoly on shooting sports in the United States. Obviously, you can shoot rifles, you can shoot practical rifle shooting, you can do all kinds of stuff.
Well, yeah, and for example, like Thailand, the government is helping them build the range for the World Shoot. Just how it is. Like, they're helping pay for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Russia, and I started shooting as a kid in high school. In high school, under the ground, we had a shooting range for young men, for young boys to start learning, military trade and different skills related to that. So I think from 7th or 8th grade, like, we would be going every week. We would be going shooting, 22 long rifle at 100 meters, learning how to do that stuff. government had a very, very large role in supporting shooting sports, because I mean their goal was to raise a kid or raise a man that's going to join the military and become a soldier. Not necessarily, but a military education was part of my high school experience. So their government, their governments in other countries do heavily support shooting sports. They help with the association, they help with building ranges, but there's also a lot of private ownership. Like I'm not sure if you ever heard of Archangel Michael Club in Russia.
Mhm.
It's tremendous facility. The guy who owns it is a multi-billionaire. I think he's like a precious metals or natural resources miner of some kind. Like he owns many plants, and well-known dude. Started shooting USPSA and built his own range in his backyard on whatever how many acres, and made it into a super nice facility that's now hosting Russian nationals and level 3 and level 4 matches even. People, I think they were hosting like a European championship of some kind. Tremendous facility, and people go there to train, like Eric Griffel, Ben Stagger. Some of these guys go there to train in preparation for bigger IPSC matches. So my crazy idea is like, hey, listen, there's a lot of oil money in Texas. Maybe we can find somebody, some oil billionaire or even millionaire who's like, hey, I like shooting and I don't want to travel an hour to a major match or fly to. I'm just gonna build a range in my backyard, and maybe there could be some kind of a partnership there, where a nice facility within a reasonable drive from a major airport that can host these major matches, that's not owned by USPSA, but is affiliated with USPSA and maintained by a third party, where we can have this mutually beneficial partnership to host larger matches.
It would be nice. It definitely would be nice. Now, Mike, I know before the show we talked, then you said you took a Ben Steger class recently. Is there any other formal training you've taken in your shooting career?
I wish I have, but no, unfortunately not. So I didn't take a class until I was already top 10 in production, and got my second jam in carry optics. And I wish I did. Like, listen, I'm a good learner, and I have background from my I used to do skydiving. I jumped for many years, and the value of coaching, like, I cannot underestimate. If anybody has the opportunity to spend listen, 400, 500, whatever the amount of money is, it's pennies compared to the investment you're making in your future. If you have an opportunity to drive 2-3 hours, even 4 hours to a class, to know how to practice, to know what to look for in your practice, what is good, what is bad, is tremendous. Like, it's going to shorten your learning curve by years, probably. There's an interesting, not sure if you ever heard of Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist. He's a podcaster. He has, I don't know, millions of followers. I started following him when he was, just developing his thing. He talks about how human brain learns. How do we shorten that learning curve? And he had a very interesting episode about half a year ago, maybe episode 20 something on YouTube, specifically about learning. And what I like about his approach is that he gives you actionable items and tools to use in your irrespective of the sport, irrespective of the activity. It could be swimming, it could be boxing, it could be shooting, tennis, whatever. If you apply those skills, if you program your brain correctly from the get-go, like, hey, this is a good repetition, that's what I want to repeat. Reward yourself mentally, like, hey, tap yourself on the shoulder. This is a better repetition. And you don't get mad. You don't just reholster the gun. Like, you had a bad draw, you don't just say, well, I'm going to do a perfect draw now. No, you assess that. You know what a bad draw feels like. You maybe even try to work with it, because if you're in a match and you have a bad draw, like, you're not going to reholster and get a new draw. Like, you got to continue. Know what it feels like. Tell yourself, that's not what I want to see on the next repetition. You tell your brain, and when you have a good repetition and you reward yourself, you release those hormones that build those neural pathways and allow you to program that skill, learn it quicker. So program your brain correctly from the get-go. So coaching, to answer your question, no, I have never taken any classes, but I know how to train and I know what to assess. So some of these books, they actually tell you, hey, this is what you're looking for. This is a good result. This is a better result. This is what you might see as a better result. So if you know how to assess your own training, I think, it's almost as good as taking a class, but nothing can replace actually. I mean, this guy is a world champion. Some of these guys, like, they look at you immediately, they just tell you exactly what the problem is. I had 12 guys taking the class, and they were shooting, and like, he was telling me that I was doing this wrong. How did he know? Like, he was only looking at me for a second. Like, dude, like, he has so much experience, he can tell right away. And now you know what you were doing wrong, and you didn't know that before. And now when you're training, you know what to look for, you know what that issue was, and you know how to avoid it. So coaching, training, like, if anybody, it has to be a reputable instructor, obviously, somebody who either train under a reputable instructor, and, like, listen, there's some great guys out there that are, have studied by the same, train, or were trained by the same guys, world champions, national champions. They can relay that information. Like, you don't need to be a grandmaster. You don't need to be, a national champion to teach these things to a newer shooter, like somebody C class, B class, A class. That information, like some of my friends are grandmasters and masters, they did not know some of these things. When Ben Steger was telling them, like, hey, you're doing this wrong, or do this thing better, and this is how you do it, they're like, oh, like, I was surprised to find out that they did not know to be shooting target focused, Like, we know, this, I know this, but we know this because we read these books. So if somebody has trained under those guys and they know how to relay that information, and they have the chemistry with the class, with the student, like, you don't need to go to, you don't need to travel to wherever, Wisconsin, wherever Ben is from, or Florida. If you're in New York, like, there's a couple of guys here right there in the area, Mason Lane is in New Hampshire. Mason Lane is a national champion. I would drive to take I would drive 4 hours to take a class with Mason. Your friend, I think, Rob as well, my friend, Rob Epifani, he's on Long Island, he's a master, he's a dedicated guy, he's doing his classes. He's heavily influenced by Ben Steger's techniques, he's a slightly different, like, I think he's more along the lines of Hwanshik Kim, who's a bit more of a engineer, a little bit more detail oriented. So there's a lot more detail in their approaches. I'm more along the lines of a simple dude, like, hey, do this like this, and don't worry about anything else. I was listening to Eric Griffel explain his grip. I'm squeezing here, I'm pushing here, it's 60% here, 40. How the hell do I know what 40% is? And I can't remember. Like, I've been doing this thing for a few years. I'm still struggling to grip my gun as hard as I can with my support hand. How the hell am I going to remember the different pressures or different? No, I need something simple. Hey, hold it, crush it. Like, I can act on that. And for 95% of us, honestly, like, unless you're trying to win the national champion, like, those little things, maybe they matter at that level. But for us regular guys, like, you just pick the low hanging fruit first, and then once you get to that level where you are in contention for, like, 90% of a national champion, you will know what you need to train on, because you don't get to that level without knowing how to do it. A good example of that, like, when I was skydiving, and we were learning how to pack, I was just starting to jump, and we were learning how to pack our parachutes. And listen, would you pack your own parachute right now if you didn't know how to pack it? Like, you'd be like, shit, man, what if it doesn't open? Well, I need to fold it correctly. I need to, so when your instructor is showing you how to do it, you pay attention, you learn it step by step, you do it very carefully. But once you reach like 100 jumps, 200 jumps, 500 jumps, you develop your own technique of packing your parachute. And at some point, like, I've gotten to a point where I can literally just crumple it up, shove it in the bag, and I'm not worried about it, because I know the key points I need to hit. I know it's going to open. But as a new student, like you, I would never recommend somebody just like, hey, do this. We used to call it a psycho pack, like only a psycho would pack a parachute like that. And that was my normal pack job, and it would be beautiful. So when you get to a certain level of any skill, you'll be able to come up with your own technique and your own approach to what you think needs to work for you for the future to get to the final 5%, I think.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're totally right. I mean, I'm always going to tell somebody to go seek reputable training, and I mean, vet your instructor. But I mean, you can't go wrong with Ben Steger, Hwanshik, Tim Herron. God, I know I'm missing a million instructors who I would.
There's a bunch of them. Anybody who's reputable, anybody who, who has a proven track record of, competing at major matches, following somebody else's program. I mean, I would trust those guys. You know,
Mhm.
they will give you the right information. And here's the thing: listen to them. Like everybody has an Instagram account now. Everybody has a YouTube channel. Listen to them first. You know, if it clicks to you with you, the way they explain things, if it clicks with you, because you gotta develop. You know, I've coached so many people in the skydiving days, and you click with some people better than with. I've taken coaching in skydiving. You know, some
Mhm.
like I've been trained by world champions, different levels. National champions, world champions. With some people, I would click, and I would get that information like that without it. I'm like, dude, like I know you know what you're talking about, and I'm sure like I should just listen and apply, but just something there, like I'm not connecting.
Mhm.
Same thing here. You know, listen to these guys. If you like what they have to say, if the methodology clicks with you, if the way they explain things clicks with you, take that class. And they take another one. Maybe somebody else will have a better way of explaining things because
Mhm.
there really isn't anything, super difficult, right? It's not, it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You know, the fundamentals are fundamentals. It's just a matter of like who can explain it to me better so that it clicks with me and I can actually apply it in my training.
Absolutely. That is definitely a thing. Now, Mike, we've gone over the division you shoot, but what gun do you shoot?
I actually was going to show you what I should. I actually just finished the dry fire session.
Oh, there you go. How was that? Was it good?
It's good. You know, I train 10 to 15 minutes a day, and which is what like I always say. Like I know some guys do 45 minutes a day, an hour a day. I've done it in the past, and I think there's a point of diminishing return. Some people just love doing it, and they can go forever doing it. I think 10 to 15 minutes a day of focused training of one or two things at a time. You know what you're assessing. You're not wasting time, and you're done. You know, so I did 15 minutes of dry fire. I worked on movement and transitions, and and I was sweaty at the end of that. So the
Mhm.
gun that I shoot is a Shadow 2. I've been shooting Shadow 2 since 2018, I think. I got into shadows. I tried the Tanfolios, a great gun. I love the geometry of it. It's very similar to SP01. Very good in my hand. The weight was perfect, but I had some issues with the extractors. I couldn't tune them. So I sold that one and I went back to the Shadow 2s. And I have two of them. I have three slides. They're set up for both production and carry optics. So I have the plate system that I can switch back and forth. I haven't shot production since since the Nationals. I think maybe shot one match in
Mhm.
production. But the last few months, I've been shooting nothing but carry optics with the Shadow 2.
Well, yeah, you got to get tuned up for nationals, which I think that was also a not the best move to have low cap nationals so early in the year.
In the
But
beginning. A lot of people didn't like that.
I mean, for you,
That's fine,
myself,
dude. I got top 10, whatever,
yeah,
what happened. So I'm good.
right. But like I say, for like people up here in the north, like it's cold still. I mean, like
I'm from the north. Like
how
I'm,
how many weeks of training did you get to go outside and actually shoot before
in the
nationals?
wintertime, none. I did not shoot in the winter at all. I would go, I think I went to an indoor range maybe like once a month to do some doubles. And that was it. Because my home range is closed for the winter because it's just there's so much snow we can't even drive up even if you could. You know, so I'm in this, I'm in the same. I'm actually in the boat of guys who like it's too early in the season, like I haven't warmed up. I'm like, well, yeah, I hear that, and the same guys who like I think Mason Wayne did pretty freaking well. I
Mhm.
know he wanted to win the Nationals, but you know,
Yeah, he did, and he'll get it. I know he will.
he
He's
will. There's no question. The guy is I really like that guy. He's really smart. He's very analytical. He's definitely going to be a multi-time national champion, I think. And he's young, dude. Like he's what is he? He's not even 30, right?
no, he's
Um,
25 maybe
yeah, yeah,
or something like that. I know
yeah,
he's a plethora of knowledge for someone in his
yeah.
years.
He's definitely wise beyond his years.
Yes, exactly. So you
Years,
know
years.
you know the fancy phrases. But Mike, I want to move on to another topic, and hopefully this will be good. What are your current goals?
Um, the current goal is really just to I don't want to get too Zen like Buddhist, like I really like walking the path to mastery. Like there's something about it. Just you could continue to get better, even if you're not competing. Like you are mastering a skill, and it never ends. Like it never ends. I have accomplished all the goals that I ever wanted to accomplish in USPSA. To be quite honest with you, my original goal when I joined, when I started shooting USPSA was to become a master of the game, and that not an M-class shooter. A master of the game is somebody who knows the game, knowing the rules, knowing the political structure, the organizational structure, the top level players competing, like all of these things, combined that makes a master of the game. Being a range officer, so over the years I became a chief range officer, I made master and then made grandmaster. Everything else after that was kind of sort of, icing on top of the cake. Winning an area title was like I honestly did not expect that. Placing top 10 at the nationals, never would have thought that at my age and only having shot USPSA for 3 or 3.5 years, I would ever be able to achieve that level of proficiency. It happened, and anything after this is just icing on the cake. So I'm going to keep walking the path to mastery. I'm going to compete at the Carry Optics Nationals. Hopefully they will pick me for the super squad for the production nationals next year. I don't know if that system is going to change, but generally I think they pick from the top 12 guys who finished the year before. So hopefully my placing this year will allow me to be on the super squad. I want to experience that. I hold no hopes of any kind to win the national title. Like I'm just too old for that, man. Like I got to be realistic. But am I going to enter the competition with them? Like, yeah, I'd like to. I'm going to shoot my match. I'm going to do my best, and then we'll see how that falls out. But to be on a super squad, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity, especially somebody who's like, listen, I'm in my 40s. When in my late 40s of all things, when else am I going to ever be on a super squad? Like it's just I got maybe 2 more years of reasonably good eyesight, and then I'm carry optics forever, man.
Well, yeah, I mean. That's what I think is pushing a lot of people is the eyesight thing. And it's so much easier and cheaper to shoot carry optics than it is open. It's you're not dumping 14, 15 grand in just pistols alone. Yeah. That's only 2 of them.
Yeah, and you can actually so if my eyesight is going, like I'm wearing these mild prescription glasses now, and I can see the target clearly, and I don't have to see the dot at all. Like I can just see something red on there. It allows you to actually, like, you can actually be on the cutting edge of this, target focused shooting with the red dot and bad eyesight. Your bad eyesight might actually drive you towards being a better shooter. Because they say, like, you don't need to see your iron sights. You don't need to see a clear, perfect eyesight, a perfect sight picture. You just need to see the target clearly, and then your fuzzy, iron sights are good enough. So when people struggle with, I gotta get better glasses so I can see my sights clearly. I'll kind of sort of point them in the direction. Okay, well, try shooting target focus, because you don't need to see your sights clearly. Like you don't have to. Like just go try to shoot it. Get the glasses that allow you to see the target clearly, and then allow your sights to be fuzzy, and just shoot it like that, and see what you can get away with. And you'll be amazed when like you don't need to see that clear sight. Yeah, of course, maybe like bar poppers or some difficult targets, you want to see those sights clearly, but like generally. Forcing yourself to shoot target focused, if you haven't been doing it, will yield better results in the long run.
Yes, it will. It will, definitely. Although my vision's so bad, I can't see a 25-yard target anymore. So I'm unfortunate. I have to have glasses.
Yeah, well.
It is what it is. But
it's what it is, man.
I think we need to tell our listeners why we're on here today.
Let's do it, man.
Well, guys, the reason Mike reached out to me is Mike has decided, or has already gotten through the whole process of deciding to run for USPSA president. He has gotten through the whole steps, if I'm correct, just waiting on more details of when the election is. So I want Mike to kind of share with you and myself what his campaign structure is about, what his plans are. His system is called Make USPSA Great Again, and it kind of stands on 4 pillars, and I'd like Mike to share that with us, and we'll discuss it a little bit.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the idea of running for the presidency came about almost a year ago, when I tried to run a local club here in New York. Reached out to my area director to see if I can get some help, maybe with some equipment. maybe some discounts. I was pointed into the direction of headquarters, reached out to the headquarters. The headquarters said, nope, there's nothing we can do for you. And I'm like, well, that makes no sense to me. Why wouldn't we want to help somehow, to the little guy, somebody who's starting a new match or a new club? Is there not something we can do? So one of the things was like developing, clubs and venues. I mean, my website has been live for a few days. So anybody who's interested in reading in more detail, it's makeuspsagreatagain.com or .org or .net or .us. Any one of those will go to the same place. And there I outline my vision, my plan, and actual, actionable steps that I would like to take to get some of those points. So as you mentioned, the 4 pillars. So the process started a while ago. And I've been working on this campaign for at least 7 or 8 months. I registered the domains a while ago, well before the shenanigans at the low cap nationals. And unfortunately, as we all know, the special election is now happening because the president was removed due to an incident that happened at the low cap nationals. And I had to kind of sort of rush the campaign out, and but now it's public. I was hoping to debate whoever's going to be running in 2022 on some of these points. And so it's been in place for a while. And so those 4 pillars are, develop, like people say, we need to attract more shooters. And I always felt like we have a lot of shooters. We don't really need to, like, shooters will come. What we need is more venues. We need to develop our, our clubs, our venues. We need to let people that are trying to shoot, actually shoot, because that, and another point that was driving that, there was, Area 7 match was so tight because of the COVID restrictions that they had to put in place a lottery system. And the criteria was you have to shoot a lot of local matches to qualify to shoot the area match. And that just didn't make any sense to me. So theoretically, I could be, like, I don't shoot a whole lot of local matches, but I could be a D-class shooter who's shooting a ton of local matches. And now I have the slot to the area match, but somebody who's, I don't know how many matches Mason Lane shoots, but maybe he hasn't shot a single local match. And he is, probably the guy who's going to win the area title now cannot compete because, he does not have a slot because he hasn't shot. So developing, clubs and venues is what, the thought that started this whole process. The other thing was, the rule changes that were implemented overnight. You remember those, right? The host restrictions, the flashlights, all that good stuff. It's just diluting the nature of competition. So increasing the competitive values, promoting competition rather than attract, the idea behind the rule changes was to attract more people to the sport. All right, great. Well, that kind of sort of goes back to the first point, but let's leave that behind. Okay, so we're attracting more people. We're diluting the competition at the higher level matches. Well, and then we introducing these rule changes overnight. Like there was no review from the membership. There was no feedback from the membership. So these major rule changes just happened overnight, just on a whim, a few people for whatever reasons. I did not like that, and it didn't sit well with me. So some of my points, people that will go take a look at it. We need to have a period of feedback from the membership on major rule changes. What defines a major rule change versus a minor? A minor rule change is a clarification of words. Like it does not change the meaning, the original meaning of the rule. Like if you have to, clarify, and these clarifications come from the NRI fairly, frequently, like these clarifications. But if a rule changes the original meaning, or a change is introduced that is, changes the original meaning of the rule, that's a major rule change. And that I would like to have feedback from the membership. And then if people say that, we'll like it, we'll like to have more flashlights, or, whatever things that they want to vote on, then yes, we'll have to implement that. But it should not happen, on a whim. It should not happen, by a will of a few who do represent us, the membership. We voted for this guy, so why wouldn't they want to know how we feel about that? And so we can't roll these rules back without, the board approval and the process, but we could implement, level 1 exemptions. So if people feel strongly that, we must have these rules in place, well, we already have a few level 1 exemptions. Like if you're a cop, you can come to the match with your duty gear, right? Like that's a level 1 example. You cannot compete at a level 2 match with those things. You know, same thing could apply with the, like, listen, you have a flashlight on your gun and you want to shoot a flashlight, you know, that's fine at level 1, but like at a major match, there are specific restrictions. And that goes along with the, you know, some people say like, we need to be more aligned with the international organization, right? We're part of IPSC. We go to the world meet, we compete by the rules of IPSC. We don't compete by USPSA rules. So what if here I am, you know, a shooter who's been shooting with a flashlight. Now I have to go and compete. I cannot bring my flashlight there. So why would we have that flashlight at level 2 and above matches in the USPSA? It makes no sense to me. So competitive values increase all these things, increase support for competitors. You know, some people don't like the idea, but you know, if you look at the bylaws, if you look at section 3 of our bylaws, there are, I think, 5 or 6 purposes of why the organization exists. And the very first line is to prepare people, amateur competitors, for national and international competitions. And the very last line, I think 0.5 or 0.6, says exactly almost the same thing. Like, we exist to prepare our athletes to compete at the national level and at the international level. We're sending people to the world to bring home the medals. You know, I was born and raised in Russia, but I'm a patriot of this country. I served in the military here, and I want to see America, you know, win. I want our guys to stand on the pedestal. I want them to bring home the gold. You know, it makes me proud. So what I'm proposing is that, like, irrespective of what the boards, and like, listen, a lot of my points, and I have to make it clear, a lot of these points that I have on the list, they do require support of the board. Like, I cannot make these changes by myself. No president can. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You know, so some of these things will require me building good relationships with the board members and promoting these things, setting forth the motion, and to make it happen. But there are a couple of things that I can do as a president, as somebody who has that authority. You know, I can implement. You know, people talk about proper calibration. It's one of my points. Like, let's address it, but let's not pretend like there is no issue. I mean, we may not be able to solve it completely, but we can make an attempt. So, does it require a rule change? If it requires a rule change, then it has to be, you know, it has to go through the process. It will have to go, as I'm proposing, to the feedback of the membership, you know, like a month-long membership, and membership feedback, and then it has to be voted on by the board, and then it has to be, you know, made into a rule. But what can I do as a president? What is my number one job? Is to host nationals. According to the bylaws, I have full and final authority over that match. So I'll either be the match director or I will delegate a match director, but I have the full and final authority. So one of the ways to solve the popper calibration is to get rid of big poppers. They were designed for major power factor, you know, the old days. And so that's where a majority of the issues we're seeing with the big poppers, you know, whether that's legitimate calibration issue or not, we can simply not have it. Like, as a match director of the nationals, there will be no big poppers at that match. So by default, 99% of those problems will be solved. If it like, maybe there's a better way, and there's been a few ideas floating around the internet. Some people have some really good ideas that I liked, you know, that we can you know, talk about, but it will require a rule change. And so by executive action, the president can make some of these changes, and that hopefully will influence the lower, you know, level 3 matches, you know, regional matches, area matches. They're the same level as the nationals match, but hopefully it will influence, you know, level 2 matches and even level 1 matches where, you know, match directors choose not to use those potentially problematic, you know, big poppers. Is it going to be a problem? You know, yeah, we have all the equipment. Yeah, you can still use it at level 1 matches. You know, there's, you know, when was the last time you ran into a calibration challenge at a major at a level 1 match? Somebody might call for it, and the match director will show up and he will throw a rocket and says, you pass, and you get a reshoot, which is terrible, but it happens, you know. But by promoting that with, you know, with starting with the nationals, which I have full and final authority of as the president, we can solve majority of these issues. There are a few other points that people might be interested in taking a look at as far as the competitive values. The other one, you know, I can do on my own, literally. I don't think I need to be the president. I can establish, you know, but I think it needs some level of organizational support for the distribution of funds and organizational aspects of it, is to establish a Team USA fund. We talked about this earlier, right? Where in other countries, national teams enjoy a lot of support from their organization, their sporting organization, from the government. A lot of financial burdens are removed. We are not that kind of a country. We don't have government support of our sport, but like Olympic teams have a reasonable level of support, be that from sponsors or be that from regular citizens, people that want to contribute and they want to see their favorite athletes, on top of the podium. So, I placed my first paycheck as the USPSA president for establishment of a Team USA fund, and that's money that could be spent on, travel expenses, uniforms. They have per diem, that could be increased, ammunition costs, and training camps. I mean, listen, just because you're a national champion doesn't mean you can't benefit from a Lenny Basham kind of a program, right? Like it applies at any level. I know there are, world champions that train other countries' national champions. Like there's always things that you can pick up. So maybe there could be some kind of a training camp that can be organized, either on site at the actual world shoot, a couple of days earlier, or maybe somewhere in the United States. It's something that we can look at. And that fund, it's not organizational money. Like the organization does not contribute anything. Like we're not using membership money for that. We're using people like myself, and I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people like me that say, hey, listen, $20 a month or $20 a year, whatever it is, a box of ammo to see my favorite guy, stand on the podium and bring home the gold. If it helps them, like it costs me nothing. It's a box of ammo. We've done that. We've done this in skydiving days. There was a Team USA fund for people that were going to different countries to compete. We would support them with, private donations, so to speak. And another hope and dream of mine is to establish a Hall of Fame, an official Hall of Fame, and it could be a virtual one. It could be somewhere on the property of USPSA, maybe some kind of a small museum with some artifacts and some plaques and maybe some donated items from the greats. Maybe Colonel Cooper could be number one, inductee in the Hall of Fame. Maybe Rob Latham, the greatest of all time. And there's a process that we can implement. How do you pick somebody? Do they have to be an active shooter? And it doesn't have to be just a shooter. It could be anybody who has contributed to the sport of practical shooting, to the development of the sport of practice. It could be a range master. It could be a former DNR. It could be a president. It does not have to be a world champion. Although if somebody is a multi-time world champion, like there should be some kind of a recognition for these guys. Every sports league has one of those, right? Like this. Why don't we have one? Like, let's recognize the history of the sport, people that came before me, before us, that have contributed. So that's my dream. The other two pillars are the development of the NROI and the support and development of better ROs and CROs. I'm a CRO. I have tremendous respect for people that work major matches. I mean, I come there as a competitor and I shoot for 3 days, and these guys have shot a staff match, and now they are working, and I'm shooting half a day and half a day and half a day. They're working the entire day in the heat, in the sun. Without these guys, there would not be that match, right? So I feel strongly that some of them need to be recognized, and there are match directors do certain things to recognize their guys, their ROs, but I think the organization can do more. So the nationals can do that, right? The USPSA, as a president, as USPSA, you don't really control your area matches or your level 2 and below matches. The president of USPSA is responsible specifically for the nationals. All other area, like club matches, have their full authority how they run their matches. Any level club, any level match, the match director has full authority. But if it's a major match, if it's a state match or an area match, and we can work with the match director, with the area director is the match director, and maybe there could be some kind of a fund, like, hey, like I have these ROs, we can compensate them better, maybe increase their stipends, maybe increase their per diem. Is it going to translate into higher match fees? Like it doesn't have. There's money in the club, in the organizational accounts, right? We are a nonprofit organization, so this is not a paycheck. This is incentives and stipends. And if there's something that can be done, like to reward these guys, I think it should be done. Now, the flip side to that is what I've observed in the past as a range officer, as a candidate in the class, as a competitor. I've seen it like, I want to make our role classes more accessible across the board.
Mhm.
I want to have more of them. I want to reward and incentivize the range master instructors, and there's not a whole lot of them in the country, but they are the grandmasters of the rule book. And these guys are, they're not paid. They do it for the love of the game. They grow, and that's part of our mission. If you look at the bylaws, that's developing new range officers. And when I was in my RO class, and I saw people in that class, and I was involved, man. I wanted to be a range officer. That was one of my goals. Like, I want to be a range. I want to know the rules. And I have this guy in front of me who's standing there, the range master instructor, and he's fully involved, man. He's a true professional. He's paying attention to everything. He's delivering the material. He's teaching us. He's sharing his soul with us, and he's that his love of the game. He's sharing with us. And there are guys and gals in the class, and they're sitting on their phones and they're checking their Facebook, and I'm like, do you really want to be here, or are you just getting a check mark that you have the ROs? And then those ROs translate into people that we hear complaints about the bad calls. People don't know how to score targets. People make bad calls on somebody, like people call a 180 on something that's borderline, like not even close to it, but because they felt like it, poor scoring calls. And so I want to make our role classes more accessible. I want to reward RMIs for teaching those classes. I also want to empower those RMIs to make immediate decisions on our role candidates right there in the class. If they don't see enough level of participation from these guys, if they feel like, hey, it's not, maybe that person is not the right candidate, that's fine. Like, they don't need to be. Let's just, I want to implement some kind of a system where if I'm a new range officer and I'm working my first major match, and I'm working under the guidance of a senior CRO, or maybe even a range master who's assigned to that stage as a CRO. And I'm running the timer, and I'm getting feedback from that guy. And at the end of the match, how we have an ROI work log as an RO, like you can log in, and you can, if you work the nationals, if you work a major match, you can enter that. It gets approved by the range master, and now it's on your record that you have worked that match. There should be some kind of a system where new ROs get feedback and from the CROs and the range masters of that match. So it's not just like, yeah, he worked, but he worked really well. Like, it may not be visible to you or me, but it's visible to the match directors, and that goes back to developing clubs and venues, giving match directors more tools to run their matches. So if I'm a match director of a level 2 match, and I have ROs applying for my match to work as an RO, because we're incentivizing these guys to come to this match, we will have a bigger pool of qualified ROs that I, as a match director, can pick from. So now I have a list of 20 names. I only need 15 ROs. Who do I pick? They all have records. Like, maybe they don't. Maybe this guy has a record. He worked a major match, but it looks like the feedback from the range master was, well, needs more work on scoring targets, needs more work on range commands, wasn't interacting well with maybe I'll pick the next guy. So that feedback system was only available to the match director, people that are running those matches, but it's somehow implemented. And then, so you see, like, it's there are two sides to this coin, right? Make it more available. Let's get more ROs if we can, but we don't need more ROs. We need more better ROs. Mm-hmm. If I'm taking an RO class and I fail my exam, how do I fail an open book exam? I have 3 tries to take a test. I have a month to take that test, and I get 3 tries with another. If I fail it on first try, shame on me. If I fail it on the second try, maybe I should not be an RO. I don't need a 3rd try. That's how I feel. So make the passing standards tighter. Just because I fail an RO exam does not mean that I'm going to stop running the timer at my local match. I've heard arguments like, hey, we need more range officers. I don't think we do. I really don't. I think we need more good officers. So if I fail that RO exam, does that mean I'm going to stop shooting matches? No, I'm going to still shoot matches. Does it mean that I'm not going to pick up a timer at a local match? No, of course, I'll still run it. And I will have that knowledge that I retained, but I will not be a certified range officer. I want to make sure that if somebody says I'm a certified range officer to a newer shooter, or somebody who's not, they know that this guy took a test. He was involved. He passed the test, and it was not an easy test. And he's maintaining his knowledge. I want to make sure that we're maintaining our knowledge as our roles. And so being a range officer means something. It's not just, well, yeah, anybody can be a range officer. Let's face it, like anybody can take a test, three tries to take the test. But I want it to mean something more than that. And so that's the portion of the, developing better ROs, increasing the confidence in the ROs, so that when a high-level shooter tells me these ROs at this major match were making poor, and I've seen this myself, we should not have that. Like good ROs get rewarded. Good ROs make better calls. Good ROs make better matches for all of us across the board. So, and I'd like to recognize some of these guys. Like I know some of these guys who are tremendously good ROs, like really good ROs, and we don't know who they are. Like if they don't mind being recognized on Facebook or not, I think USPSA should do a better job in recognizing the guys that are doing, this volunteer work, and they do it for the love of the sport, and they travel to these big matches, and they work 9 days or how many days they work, not just incentivize them, but actually recognize them, give them the recognition that they deserve. So, and then finally, the transparency and the accountability. We talked about this. I have all these points that I'm running on, right? Some of them are good. Some of them people might say, well, I don't like it, whatever, right? If I get voted in and I'm the president of the United States Practical Shooting Association, and these are the points that I got voted in on, and I set forth the motion with the board, like, let's make this happen. Membership wanted this, and then we get blocked. I say, make it visible to the membership. Like, hey, what you voted on is getting blocked. Hold your elected representative accountable. Why are they blocking these motions? I say, let's make some of these things public. Virtual town halls. I mean, I work in IT, like that's my regular job. I know how easy it is to host a 500-person virtual town hall meeting where people can sign up. They can post questions in advance. They can hear from their elected officials. And if elected officials choose not to, that's also a telling thing. Like if I'm the president and there's a virtual town hall happening and I'm not there, like that doesn't speak well. That shouldn't sit well with anybody. So let's have more visibility into these things. When I see the meetings of the board being published and they talk in one sentence about something that's going to have a major impact on things, and I understand the need for executive sessions. Sometimes they do need to exist, right? But I want to see more details. We're voting on some things. Like that's not really, we're talking about changing some things. That doesn't tell me anything, and it doesn't tell you anything. And you should ask those questions like, hey, well, what exactly are you talking about? Why shouldn't we have a vote on this? We elected you guys. You guys represent us. Shouldn't we have, a visibility? So I also, and I'll probably mention this, along those same lines, I want to have a closer, line of communications with the section coordinators, because these are the guys that are actually on the ground that can help with some of these things. If you have a problem with your local match, maybe the club is enforcing their local rules against Article 3 of our rule book, section coordinator should bring it up, and that's actually in the bylaws as well. Section coordinator will inform the headquarters of some of these things. Headquarters does not get involved into the disputes of local matches and personal beefs and things like that. But if the rules of the organizations are not followed, if the section coordinator needs support, I say they should have a direct line of communication, not just to their area director, but also to the president. So I would like to have some of these meetings, with the section coordinators, once or twice a year at a minimum, and some of these virtual town halls with the entire membership or whoever signs up, in advance, post the questions, the reports that the president gives to the board. Why can't it be, a virtual thing? Membership does not have to, be able to, voice their opinion on these meetings. There can be just silent observers, but they are informed of what's happening, So I'd like to increase transparency and accountability within the organization. That's number one thing, or one of the number one things. So, I know I spoke for a long time, and there are a lot of things and I really would like for people to go and read. And when we talk about elections, we have some, there's going to be a lot of people running for this election. There's going to be some great candidates, and some of these guys I respect and like, and spoke to them personally. And I think it's going to be great. It's going to be great competition for all of us. What I'm challenging every single one of us that's watching right now and is going to be watching later is not to vote based on the personality. Don't vote for somebody who you think, well, I know this guy. He's a good guy. He's been doing it for 20 years. Well, you know, what is his platform? What are his ideas? Is he going to do more of the same? Well, we just voted out more of the same, right? We don't want more of the same. We want something new. We have some new fresh ideas. So vote on the ideas, vote on the actionable plans that that person is sharing. Challenge us. So if like I'm the only one right now who has a campaign, as far as I know anyway, who has a campaign published, and I worked on this for quite some time. I want to see the same level of participation from everybody who is running for the president. Mm-hmm. Through competition, we as membership will get a better president. Like that's the bottom line. Like if I don't win, that's fine. I will have started the conversation. I will have challenged these guys to elevate their game. Just like when you're competing at a local level and you have a guy that you want to beat, like he's elevating your game. And when you're breathing down his neck, he has to elevate his game, right? So that's my challenge to the viewers. Read the campaign, ask your guy. Like if I'm not your candidate, ask your candidate. Like, what are you doing about this? I kind of like his point. I don't like that guy, but I kind of like his point. You are my guy. What are you doing about it? Challenge us all to earn your vote, not just because I'm a good guy and I've been doing it for 20 years.
Right. Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I encourage everyone to look at these points, ask the questions. I mean, on Mike's website, there is a contact info. You can even email me questions. I will bring Mike back on and we can talk about it. I do want to dive into some of these questions, so speaking on some of these points, but at first I have to make a comment is I know I talked to Matt Hempel the other day and he was saying, when it comes to, we don't really need more competitors in the sports because I know in your area, local matches fill up what, less than 5 minutes?
Like that, man. Some of them within a minute.
And you have to be on top of it. I've seen like comments between Noel and Rob, like, hey, don't forget registration starts at XYZ for some of these clubs.
Freaking Hempel does not need to be on top. He'll be like, I'm Matt Hempel, and he'll get like a red carpet to the start line.
He could. I mean, that is a fair statement. But yes, I love bringing new people in, but I don't think it needs to be our current focus. And I think some people would agree and some wouldn't. But more clubs would be better. More equipped clubs would be even better, in my opinion.
I actually have another idea I wanted to share that I forgot to mention.
Go right ahead.
So the idea started shaping in my mind a while ago of, we talked about, vendor discounts, how, maybe USPSA can sponsor some of these things. There should be like a rent to own program where a new club, through their match fees, they buy 10 poppers from an approved USPSA, vendor at a discounted price. USPSA may, front some of the costs, and then the club will repay that over a period of a year as they, are a new club. But the other thing, the idea came in my mind a year ago. So when I start, to observe some of these guys doing, streaming video and providing services like the scoring system, like Bill Duda specifically, he does Go Fast on Suck. He does the scoring. He did it at a level 2 match here in New York. Mm-hmm. I think he did it a couple area matches, which is, I think, a tremendous service to the sport. Well, let's expand that. How about match as a service program? You have there might be somebody who wants to step up and service matches within a 3, 4, maybe 5 hour radius from them. So let's use Bill Duda as an example. Mm-hmm. He has a trailer, hypothetically speaking. He has a trailer. Not only is he providing the Wi-Fi capabilities and the scoring capabilities to the match, maybe a match like we had this level 2 match in Staten Island across two little clubs, two neighboring clubs. Maybe there's a club that has 8 bays, and maybe they're able to host, a major match like a section match, but they don't have the equipment. They don't have the swingers. They don't have the poppers. Maybe they don't have the target. They don't want to invest the money because the club may not be, as equipped. Well, match as a service program will have that vendor travel to the match. The match director will have those stages approved by USPSA as it normally happens. The NROI approves those stages. They state, he can share those stages with specific dimensions of their bays and be like, hey, Bill, can you help me set up this match? Bill will look at the match book. You know, we need 20 poppers, we need, you know, whatever, how many target stands, all that stuff. Whatever the local match, the local club does not have, that vendor will deliver. The vendor will come in. They might hire somebody locally, or they might have some people from the club help set up. But the vendor is responsible for, you know, setting up the match, providing the poppers, the equipment, and breaking it down and taking it back. They get rewarded for that. Obviously, there's some kind of a contract involved. But why not have a program like this? You know, by developing some of these venues into, you know, developing their capabilities, hosting bigger and better matches. You know, it's something I think is doable, and you know, and I think people will step up. People that are already doing it, they will just expand their capabilities as long as they can. You know, as long as we help them, the organization helps them with some of these venues. So the idea is, well, we can actually run a query right now. We can go and say, well, how many clubs have lost their affiliation over the last, I don't know, 5 years? And we can say, well, this club, and that club had, you know, 7 bays or 8 bays. Let's reach out to the section coordinator. That's why I wanted to establish direct channel of communication with the section coordinator. Hey, you know, what happened there? Why didn't, you know, what happened? Can we find another guy who can step up locally? Because the organization does not control local clubs. We cannot, you know, we don't have the capability to do that. But if a local guy steps up and says, I want to be a match director here, we will help them, you know, but let's find out why these clubs lost their affiliation. Did they not have enough participation? Did they not have the support of the, you know, the club, you know, board of directors? How can we either restore some of these venues? Maybe we can enter into a partnership. Maybe there's a declining, you know, club that you know, specifically set up for, you know, for pistol competition. Maybe they don't have rifle bays. If it's a declining venue, maybe we can enter into some kind of a partnership where we'll help them. Again, some of these things require support of the board. Some of these things a president cannot do on their own, but we should at least try to develop the venues rather than just bring more shooters into the sport.
Absolutely. And even if the president can't do it on their own, at least if it has the president's support, it has a lot easier way of getting approved, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, I missed what I was looking for. And I mean, honestly, so I know in my area, some of our clubs, their BODs don't want to spend any money on practical shooting or any more money. Like I know one club, they are forced to use their jankety homemade swingers because their club doesn't want to buy them swingers.
So then you know, rent to own program would be perfect for them, right? Here we are, like we have an approved vendor who will give them a discount. USPSA will cover some of the costs, and then the club will repay those costs over a period of a year. But now the club owns it after a year. They don't have to put up, like right now as a small, so we're starting a local match, you know, here in New York at Black Rock, right? We don't have any equipment. Like I personally own like 26 target stands and a bunch of target sticks. I have a little swinger that I bought, you know, may not be good for, but like we can use some of these things. We can start small. We can run a classifier match. We can collect some money. We can reinvest that money into better, or I can go to the club and I can ask for a loan, which I don't want to do necessarily. So maybe this guy that we're talking about, like your club, maybe you don't want to take a loan from the club. Maybe you would rather work with USPSA and get all this steel up front and then repay it over a period of time. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, it's a great option. Now, there's one thing I was liking in here was, I think it was in can't remember exactly what section it is, but it's the printed rule book. And honestly, I think running a level 2 match, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, guys, we should have a printed rule book of the most current edition on the bay. So if someone does question your call or question a rule, we can then flip to the book and show them the rule. And then it's stated in the rule book of that's what the rule is. Yeah. If you don't like it, we obviously can go get you the match director, but a printed rule book, I think, is a very good idea.
Yeah. But that also goes, you know, so the reason why, that's my personal opinion, I may be wrong. The reason why they went away from the printed rule books is because they put in place a mechanism in the bylaws to be able to change those rules, you know, on the fly almost. And as a result, you know, having a printed rule book became impractical because they're anticipating frequent changes to that rule book. So to print them out became impractical. What I'm suggesting is that we need to tighten the standards for changing rules. We already have a very, very strong rule. I mean, that's actually to me, that's the biggest benefit of this game is you have a known rule book. I can go to California, I can go to Texas, I can go anywhere and know the rules that I'm competing by. Like I don't need to guess. That's not the case with like three gun or some other sports. Like you can actually have rules made up right there on the spot for you if whatever the political games. But having a rule book, a strong rule book that's been refined over the years is one of the biggest benefits that this organization has. So there's no reason for us to rush into rule changes overnight like has been done fairly recently. I say let's lock up the rules. If something major needs to happen, that can happen, on a regular basis, once a year or every 6 months. But let's have a printed rule book. Now, for a level 2 or above match, generally RO is not going to open a book and show the shooter, like it's in shooter's best interest not to argue with an RO and just like, listen, would you mind calling either a CRO or the range master, and the range master will make the final determination. If you're not happy, you can arbitrate. There is a process in place for that. But at a local level, though, it's been tremendously helpful to me personally as a new RO. One of the guys, he's now, I think he's now a range master and a section coordinator. And there was a recent change about the walls and getting support and stability from the walls, if it's within the fault lines, if it's outside. I think it was like 2019, there was a rule change. And we were the match, and it was a recent change. And I don't remember, I wasn't aware of the change as well as I should have been. And a call was made, and I'm like, but that's not right. So he simply opened the book, put it on the table, and he pointed me to the rule. Didn't argue with me, didn't say anything. Just I'm like, cool, okay, great, cool. Now I know. So I think at a local level match, it would be much more helpful for that specific purpose, as you mentioned. Somebody disagrees with the call, and then the range lowering begins. Well, I think it should be this or it should be that. I'm like, nope. Here's the rule book. Here's the rule.
Absolutely.
Like you can't just somebody. And I've seen this so many times from local range. And that's again to the point of raising the trust in the range officer title. I see local range officers with horrible commands. They don't know the commands. Certified range officers. I see guys that are, the beeper goes off and their gun is not running, and like, all right, let's restart them. I'm like, that's not how things work. That does not inspire confidence at a level 1 match. He's not going to get that reshoot if he goes to a sectional match or to a state match. So why are we allowing this? Decubable offenses that people just ignore, So, but if there's a rule book, if there's a printed rule book and somebody's questioning the call, just like you said, like at a level 1, that would be tremendous. I love having printed rule books. And if we tighten those rule changes standards, there's no reason to anticipate frequent rule book reprints. Then we can have a rule book again, a printed rule book.
Well, and honestly, even if you offer the printed rule book for, say, I don't know, we'll say some arbitrary number of $10 to $20, and the membership can order it and be like, I want a printed rule book.
Yep.
I'd pay for it, because it takes up no space in your bag, especially because you can print them on, like, I'm holding up a steno pad, but you could make a book this size with maybe a spiral bound this way, and it's tiny and doesn't take up no space at all.
I think Amazon actually offers you, like, you can be your own publisher, and you can print your own books. So I don't know what the stipulation is. I think there was a stipulation as far as being able to print for distribution your own rule book. Like, I cannot make a profit by printing 1,000 books and then selling them online, rule books. But if I wanted to print one for myself, like, it may not be financially viable for me to print a $25 or $30 single book just for myself. But if the organization allows somebody to do it and allow them to sell at a reasonable price, $5 a book or $10 a book, like, I will personally buy 8 books today so that I can have them. I can have 6 of them in the ammo box that contains my timer and my tablet, and then I can have 2 as a backup. And I will have them for my local matches if I can buy those books today.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would, and I think if you make it at a fair enough cost, I mean, the volume of people ordering a book would pay for itself easily, and I like printed rule books. Makes life a little bit easier. Then you don't have to argue or hang on, let me get my phone and scroll through. I mean, it's very easy to look through the rule book if you know how to use Control F and then search through it. But
then the thing is, like, So I have the app, and I'm at a club where there's no signal. And
Mhm.
yes, they recently made it so you can be offline and download the rule book. But sometimes it takes forever to open. Not recently, but maybe like a year ago, I had a local match. Somebody holstered an unsafe firearm, which is, it was a 2011 firearm. Then they holstered the gun and then they applied the safety. So, unfortunately, I saw it. I was the RO running the timer. I had to DQ the guy, unfortunately. And we were arguing about what rule it was. And here I am standing on my phone before they implemented the offline feature. And here I am trying to get online so I can pull up a rule book so I can show the match director / range master what rule I'm quoting for this disqualification. Until I finally just lost my patience. I'm like, listen, I cannot load it. But the rule that I'm quoting is this specific rule, so we can look it up later.
Mhm.
But having a printed rule book would have solved all of those problems. There it is. I don't have to, wait for it to load on my phone. So,
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think more people would be at ease with it. And like I said, you don't have to buy it, guys. I mean, it's and you off, if you
the match will buy. Like if I'm a match director,
Mhm.
and I have, how you go to a match and you have an ammo box that has your timer, your tablet, and some pasters, maybe a staple gun. You could shove that book in there.
Mhm.
If it costs you $10, it's not even it's like what 3 rolls of paper of pasters that you can buy a printed rule book if it's available, but it's not even available. So
Yes, there is that. And I'm just trying to scroll. Now, you said get rid of, at least at major level, like nationals, to have no big poppers. Now, besides getting rid of big poppers, what ideas so far do you have about popper calibration other than just getting rid of those poppers?
So there were some ideas floating around, and some folks say, well, let's pick up the ammo, let's get the magazine that he was shooting and go to the chrono. If he passes the chrono, it counts as a hit. There's a clear, hit on that popper.
Mhm.
It's in the calibration zone. Let's take him to the chrono. If the chrono, if the ammo chrono is above or at the declared power factor, we count it as a hit. There were a couple other opinions on that. And remember, we talked about, different things that yield smaller results. Like we talked about the grip. And I said, well, for me, the simple way works better. Like if I know to hold the gun like this and
Mhm.
crush the gun with this hand, I'll be able to execute that. My plan for not, having made, large poppers at the nationals will address majority of those problems. And then I will invite, I will set forth the motion, like, hey guys, there are some good ideas. There's 2 or 3 good ideas that I saw online. Let's take a look at them together. The board, let's open it to the membership. It's so easy to create a survey, and send it out to people. It could be a thing where you log in after your local match and you click on, you want to check your classifier, you get a pop-up, hey, would you mind completing this survey? How do you feel about this? You submit the feedback. If you're interested, if you don't have to, if you don't want to, you can click ignore, but then you choose not to help solve the problem that you might be interested in. So I don't want to set forth any solutions like, hey, this is my only solution. I say, let's discuss them.
Mhm.
There were at least a couple of them that I saw on the forums that are being discussed. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that. That could work, but it requires a rule change, and there's a process involved with that. And if I have my way, like the membership will get to vote on those rule changes. It's not going to be just overnight kind of thing. But at a very minimum, we could solve that situation by not having the situation with the large, pop up, and then address the rule change.
Mhm. My next question, I don't know necessarily if it's for something a president would have to deal with, but maybe just you in general, Mike. But what is your thoughts on non-competitor reset? We've seen some level 2 state level matches that have gone to staff or volunteer reset.
Yeah,
I
I
kind of
like
want
it,
your
man.
opinion on that.
I personally like it a lot. I've been to major matches where having to reset would wear me out, like as a competitor. And I'm like, listen, here I am. I want to do well at this match, and I'm old and I'm fat and I'm resetting in the heat, and it wears you out as a competitor. So I like the idea of not having to reset. And there are some ideas I like. Again, personally, I like it. I would love to have major matches with staff reset. But then the question becomes, well, that's a good idea. How do you accomplish it? Like, what is your actionable plan to get there?
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of match directors out there that have been doing it and they have been successful with that. I would reach out to these guys. Like, that would be my first thing. Hey, how are you doing it? Like, what is your solution? Can you help me? There were some ideas floating around. Let's get the Boy Scouts involved and let's have. I'm like, listen, Manny, tell me, what do you think will happen if a kid gets hurt on the shooting range?
Oh Lord, it would
Exactly.
be done.
Exactly. But that's not necessarily a bad idea. What if,
Mhm.
here I am, I'm a father, I have a 12-year-old kid, a 13-year-old kid, who I want to bring with me to the match. And I want him to be able to get involved, maybe not shooting, but maybe hang out with his dad, watch his dad shoot. And I can sign a consent form where I'm removing all responsibility or I will observe my kid. I'm taking full ownership of this, and he will help reset, right?
Mhm.
And maybe organization can have some kind of a stipend or some kind of a reward for that. So here you are. You have a young man who wants to get in the sport, a young kid who under his parents' supervision, earning a little bit of money while he's doing it, learning the sport, getting involved, spending time with his father.
Mhm.
Like that's potential. Like so that's that Boy Scout idea. Let's take it to the maybe there will be a couple of parents who will want to bring their kids and have them spend the day with them and earn a couple of dollars and help reset. Is it viable? It's as viable as the Boy Scout idea.
Mhm.
I think it's actually more. So because you're actually killing two birds with one stone, if not more.
Mhm.
You go to the major matches, you go to the nationals. There are some staff that are younger, some staff that have been doing it for a while. They may not want to do staff reset. Maybe there could be some stages that are staff reset and some stages that are not. Personally, I'm a big fan of staff reset. I would love to see that happen, and I would reach out to people that have done it to ask for their opinion,
Mhm.
and if we can come to some kind of a like as a match director. So now that I'm the as a president, you are the match director of the nationals. There's no reason for me to not learn from these guys. There are guys who've been doing it and they have a lot of, and they can bring that experience to the nationals. Maybe they could be, assistant match, or maybe they could be appointed as the match director. Like, I don't see anything because you can, as the president, you have the full and final authority over the nationals, but you can also appoint a match director. It happens with the area matches. If you shadow, like, the area director is, legally or technically he is the match director, but he or she usually has an appointed match director, somebody who's actually on the ground doing things and
Mhm.
implementing their ideas. So if there are good ideas, and there are, like, there's no reason why we can't work together and make them happen. Like,
Right. And I honestly think even if we could just do partial, some staff reset stages and some not. And here's another idea. I'm just spitballing here because it came to the top of my head. Even if we just say all steel is reset by staff, like if it's a popper or like that's an activator, that absolutely needs to be set by staff so that it's set correctly and it's competitively equitable for everyone. So we don't get a popper that is obviously set wrong, because not every competitor has seen every type of popper. They've not seen, there's different, not every manufacturer makes the same popper. So at least then if the staff is informed by the facilities manager at that club of who's running that level 2, be like, this is how these poppers work and this is how exactly it needs to be set up, then you set it up correctly.
yeah, I mean, generally it's already in place. Like, generally, most of the major matches I've been to, staff generally resets the movers and activators. They specifically for that reason, they don't want to have reshoots, because a reshoot will hold up a match a great deal, right? So it's up to the ROs to reset the activated targets and maybe even check the steel. And generally, when I'm at the match and I'm resetting something, I will ask the RO who's next to me, or like, would you mind checking, did I set it correctly? But yes, absolutely. I think but it's already happening at major matches, simply because it'll solve a lot of problems, like reshoots. We don't want to have those because something was not set correctly. And generally, like, during staff matches is when they will troubleshoot some of these things. The range master, of course, will go. They will calibrate every popper. They have the procedure for that. So at major matches, it's a lot more controlled, and the CRO will hold like as a CRO, you will brief your staff. You have 2 or 3 ROs working with you on that stage. You will work out a system where this RO guards these targets, so nobody's pre-pasting anything. That RO is resetting that popper, and that's how and then you rotate. So the CRO is kind of sort of orchestrating the flow of a stage that he's working. And generally, like at a larger matches, like the nationals specifically. So I'm a CRO, but I will never be as somebody who hasn't worked in the capacity of a CRO at a major match. Like I will never be assigned to a stage at the nationals as a CRO. It's probably going to be a range master. Even range master instructors, there's like only 10 of them in the entire country. Even range master instructors often work national stages as CROs because they have such a tremendous amount of experience as instructors, as range masters, but they're working a CRO job. So, to help run those stages smoother. And I know for a fact that they organize their ROs that are on that stage. But you are guarding these targets. You are pasting. You're making sure nobody's pasting those. You are resetting the popper or the activator. So that's where the level of experience comes in. That's why these guys are so valuable to the organization, because a good RO, a good CRO will make a match better. Like they will make the match run smoother, and we as shooters will probably not even notice. Like here's the funny part: like you go to a match, and if you have nothing to complain about a stage, that means somebody did their job. Like that means something, like everything went smoothly because those ROs were doing their job. And I feel like we should recognize that.
Absolutely. And here's another idea I just thought of, is maybe even if you're going to be from a range officer to a CRO, maybe have to have a major match where you're being mentored directly by a CRO, kind of like how we have range master candidates who go from a CRO to a range master. They have to pretty much run a major match to become a range master. Why not implement the really, to make sure everyone's doing their job right, fulfilling the job of a CRO from being a range officer to a CRO, a mentorship section where, that's kind of like your last step before you actually become that next level. And to prove like that person was ready and to become that next level of range officer, instead of taking a test online and taking the course, however long that.
I like it, man. I like that idea. I mean, up to CRO, you can take the class, and but if you're going to work a major match, so like I'm a CRO, I have no major match experience. A range master will not pick me to run that stage. A range master will assign me as an RO, where I will get that feedback from a senior, from a CRO who's experienced. I will get that feedback. I will work under his guidance. Hopefully I'll get some, and that goes back to my, one of my points that I have as far as the feedback system for the new ROs and new CROs. Just because you are a CRO, you just earned your CRO rating online or by taking a seminar, does not mean that you will work as a CRO at your next major match, unless there's a shortage of ROs, which is another problem that I would like to solve by incentivizing ROs. So I think I like the idea of having feedback for range officers. And like, listen, here's the thing: like if somebody gets consistently or more than a few times gets less than good feedback, like I don't know if there's going to be grades A, B, C, D, but like if you have negative feedback, like poor target scoring, or needs work on range commands, and then you have 2 or 3 of those across your record, then maybe you don't need to be an RO. Like you're not making efforts to improve. And if let's say the point that I'm making, empower range master instructors to make immediate decisions on some of these guys. I've been to a local match where I saw a certified range officer running a timer in one hand and checking his text messages in the other. Like literally the guy is shooting and this guy is looking at his phone. And I'm like, look at the creed of the range officer. There's a point that says your attention will always be focused on the shooter. Like that's what we all these guys. So I hold myself to a higher standard as a range officer, even though, so if I was a range master or a range master instructor or somebody, like even if I'm a CRO and I see this happen, like I can come up and I can, make some suggestions to this gentleman. but oftentimes you may not run into a very receptive person. Maybe if you're range master instructor or range master, maybe you should be able to to take further action. Maybe that person does not need to be a certified range officer. He's not going to quit the sport. He's not going to quit running the timer, but like he should not be a certified range officer. It just shows me lack of respect for what we do and lack of respect for the shooter this month, because that's our responsibility. We all good range commands, we're all proper scoring, and we're all our attention to the guy that's on the line. Now, that's my feeling, man.
No, absolutely, I agree. And now I want to switch off into your transparency category just for a little bit. Is
Let's
the
do it.
fact that I agree with virtual town halls, because then it gives the opportunity for people to be informed. And I know you made a comment of having the section coordinators having pretty much their own town hall essentially as well, because then and that might even have to be broken up by areas for certain days, so because not everyone's on the same time zone for one, and some areas are bigger than others. But I agree with virtual town halls, so that people can be informed, and then it's their fault if they don't go out and get the information. It's not that it wasn't put out there. We're trying to be a transparent organization, and if you're failing to stay up to date, I mean, it's on your own fault essentially at that point.
That's it.
And I agree. I think we need a little bit more level of details in our BOD minutes. I mean, I understand we go into executive session, but it would be nice to have a little bit better details. And
Yeah. I mean, they can at least, like, they don't have to announce their thought process and decisions that are being made, but we know what the topic is about. Like and this is not like I had these conversations even before running, like, you remember the whole, Ryan Flowers and the other guy whose name I don't want to say, who was changing his scores, and there were two contrasting cases. One guy denied everything, and he said, "No, I've never done any of this," even though there's tremendous amount of evidence that he has done it. The other guy said, the other guy didn't modify his scores. He simply removed the score from the match, and he goes, "I'm so sorry. Like, it will never happen again. I did do it. And, I apologize. What can I do to make things better?" By admitting his fault, he gave the board no choice but to find him. Like, think of it as a judge and jury kind of thing. Like, if you admit your fault, there really is no reason to go to the jury trial, right? Because you've admitted your fault. Now the judge is going to sentence you. But if you go to the trial and you deny everything, and these guys are like, well, he denies everything, and so we don't have clear evidence. I don't know what defines clear evidence. It's not like you don't need to have clear evidence. You just need to have a lot of evidence, and that's enough to make the right decision. So if you only have one instance of it, okay, that's not enough evidence. But if you have circumstantial evidence, but there's a lot of it, and you have accounts from other people who observed it, that's enough evidence to make the decision. So one guy denied. The other guy kind of sort of like didn't even do anything to advance his own scores, but admitted the fault. And so they banned one guy and kept the other guy. And so we knew, to the point of executive sessions, we knew what the discussion was about. And we knew after they exited the session, when they made the decision, what the discussion was about. So why not say, this is the topic that we're discussing. We're not at liberty to discuss what we're talking about as far as the specifics and the decisions, but that's what's on the agenda. So that membership at least knows that an issue is being addressed that they might be interested in hearing later, so that a month from now, 2 months, whenever the decision is made, we can ask about that and we can hold our elected officials accountable. And that's back to the virtual town halls. I mean, some of these things, it's right there. And like, if you have to enter executive session, you can click a button, and some people may not agree to that. Some people might say, well, I don't want to be recorded. Well, how do big corporations handle that? How do big corporations handle virtual town halls when the CEOs of those organizations address the entire workforce, and then those recordings make it out there live? Right, it happens. Like, it's not like it's a new thing. We have the technology, we have precedents that why not have it? Like, do we have something to hide? Is that what it is? Like, why do we not want to have membership who elected us know what we're talking about? I don't understand. I don't understand the reasoning. Legal issues, executive session. Any kind of risk that might cause harm to the organization, yeah, you have your executive session. And then you click a button and there's no video feed. But all other issues, rule changes specifically, you must have membership involved because these rules are made for us.
Yeah.
We should have feedback on them.
Right. And another point off of this topic would be, I've heard on the internet people have talked about having like a committee of high level nationally competitive shooters aid the board. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but like the board could ask them directly what they thought. Or
I do have some thoughts on that, man. I do. It actually brings out another point before I answer that. I want to establish feedback from all level shooters, but specifically from high level shooters on the stage designs. And I wanted to incorporate a database that will help me as a local match director to run better matches. So if you're a grandmaster and you have competed at Area 6, and I have solicited your feedback as the headquarters, so I'm not in charge of the Area 6 match, but that feedback from that area gets submitted to the headquarters, and you say, I really like this stage, this specific stage, and then we'll get 20 other votes on that stage. That stage becomes part of the repository of the central database that's available to match directors across the country. And then here I am in New York, and I see that the latest and greatest stage was just upvoted, from that area match that none of my guys will ever be able to go shoot because it's Area 1 or Area 2 or whatever. But I can set up that match because it's documented. The stage brief is there. The dimensions are there. It becomes an official repository for any local match to be able to run. The idea was given to me actually by one of my friends who's also a match director and an M-class shooter. He shot, I think we shot together, was it Area 6? I think it was Area 6 we shot together. And he loved the stage that I had an FTSA or 2 FTSA, some crazy, it just destroyed my performance. But he loved that stage, and I love that stage as well. And he wanted to run it again, and he was able to set it up at his local match based on his recollection of that stage. I was able to reshoot that stage without the FTSAs. But the idea is have those cool stages that have been voted by not just high-level shooters, but by everybody. Like they've been like, this was a great stage. And then have it available to any match across the country. You can simply log in onto your manager club, and then you have access to that database, and you can sort by votes or by whatever round count. Like all this filtering can be done. To your point though about asking for help of high level shooters. So just because you're a high level shooter doesn't mean you really know the rules all that well. Ability to perform well does not always translate into anything else for that matter. Like you could be a high level shooter and be a horrible coach. Like you cannot coach people. You could be a high level shooter and not know some of the rules. You may have been exposed to them, so you know them by default, but like you have no, maybe you read the rule book, but like you're not an RO, you're not really. So while I have respect for a lot of opinions from the high level shooters, I also take it with a bit of a grain of salt. We have an organization that's in place that I want to increase trust in. The NROI, these guys know a lot. They've been around, they've been doing this, they've run into a lot of these scenarios. I truly love when they post these question of the month polls. I'm not sure if you ever seen them from the NROI. And sometimes they post a question that I know the answer to, and I answer them, like, cool. And then you see the results and you see polarizing, like 50-50 division on what the call should be. And I'm assuming that the people that got it wrong, the other half of the people are certified range officers. And I'm saying, man, maybe you need to maintain your knowledge on some of these things, because if you're a certified range officer, that means you're running timers. That means you're making bad decisions because you just voted incorrectly on the. So again, back to the question of, yes, I will. And here's my thing. Remember how I said hold our elected officials accountable? We voted for you, and we voted on these points. Why are you blocking them? I say I'm going to hold these high-level guys accountable as well. Hey, you voiced your opinion on this issue. I want to work on this issue. Come help me. And so, if you choose not to help me, constructively, not just like, hey, I have this idea, but let's sit down, let's talk about this. It could be an hour-long conversation. It could be a multiple rounds of conversation until we solve it. All right, I will reach out for help, and I will ask for your opinion, and then we'll have several of them, and we can post it to the membership, and the membership can vote on that. Like, that's a proper usage of democracy. Like, yes, you have the experience, you probably know the rules. Let's talk. You have some ideas. There's a lot of these ideas are floating around. There's some great websites, people host, and they have their opinions, and they say, like, these are the suggestions for the next USPSA president. I'm like, yeah, some of these are really good, and I'd like to work with you on that. And others, then I've heard people say things like, dude, like, you're a high level shooter. You don't really know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. What, getting rid of major power factor. People say, like, why are you even, like, why even bring this up? What is the major power factor in IP? First, let's just answer those questions. People say, will you get rid of PCC, or will you get rid of major power factor? What is our mission? Again, I direct people to the section 3 of the bylaws. We are preparing ourselves for national and international competition. And it's not just once they're saying it in the bylaws, it's twice. It's number 1 line, and it's the last line. So what is the major power factor? What are the divisions that are recognized at IPSC? If we want to, some people say in the same sentence as they say, let's get rid of the major power factor and let's align ourselves more with IPSC by bringing production to 15 rounds. I'm like, IPSC has they actually have a different power factor for major. For some divisions, I think open is 160 power factor, and classic or standard, which is their versions of single stack and limited, their power factor is 170. So USPSA split it middle. I guess, we have one single major power factor, 165. So if now we will go away with major power, so that alone should answer the question of, would I get rid of major? No. If we want to align ourselves with IPSC, why would I want my top level guy compete with 125 power factor when he's going to go to the world meet and he's going to be shooting minor over there? No. Why would I get rid of PCC if it's represented at IPSC and we're sending our guys to compete there to bring home the gold? Why would I get rid of PCC? Limited 10, on the other hand, like, I'll be the first one to say there's no reason for limited 10. I've heard some people say, well, we have restricted states in New York, and I'm like, limited 10 was not put in place to address, restrictive federal or state laws. It was done well before that. I mean, there was an article somewhere on NROI blog. It was done to address the old days when single stack shooters wanted to compete with more rounds. So they gave the option to single stack guys to use bigger magazines and shoot 10 rounds. That was the reason for that. That's gone. Like, there's no more single stack major gun, limited guns. Everybody's shooting proper limited guns, although some people still do. And then to the point of people that are saying, well, what about the limited states? What about New York? What about New Jersey? What about Connecticut? All these states. Well, what do PCC guys do in Connecticut? What do open guys do in New York? Right? What do limited guys do in New Jersey? They shoot the same divisions. They shoot them with 10 rounds. That's also in the rule book.
Because that's actually a specific rule, correct?
It is a specific rule, exactly right. Like, you cannot enforce local club laws without breaking the affiliation agreement, section 3 of the rule book. But if it's a state law, then everybody's shooting, the capacity of the state. So.
That's a good
point. I went on a
point.
bit of a tangent there.
Right, and yes, if people. Now, I don't know about what are your thoughts on revolver? I know that's always talked. It's lumped in with limited 10. I mean,
listen, revolver is, it's unfortunate, but it's a dead division, right? But it's a legitimate division. It's represented at IPSC, right? If you go to the world meet, you can shoot a revolver. You can win a title. So is it a legitimate division? It is a legitimate division. We have to recognize it if we're going to compete at the world level. Is it a live division? It's a zombie division. It's moving, and they have their own game. They have the I-Core, right? If I personally don't see I would love for people to shoot more revolver if they want to, if they have it. If revolver people want to rejuvenate and revitalize this division, then they need to have more revolver shooters. I mean, that's kind of like, so grow your own, bring more people into revolver. Maybe it'll, get up and start walking again. Would I vote for canceling it? I would not, but I would also put it to the membership. So if the membership says that there's no need for revolver, I would actually say there is, because we are sending our guys to compete with revolver at the world meet, and we have to represent those guys.
Correct. And with I mean, even at nationals, there was like what 40 revolver shooters, but half of those revolver shooters were grandmaster revolver shooters.
My good friend Chris Sandelsky is a revolver grandmaster, and that's how I met him. Like, dude, you're a revolver grandmaster. That's tremendous. I don't think I know anybody who's a grandmaster and at that with a revolver. So
A lot of people don't know Bill Duda shot a revolver too.
who's Bill Duda? Nobody knows Bill Duda.
Nobody knows Bill Duda. He's just a drunk meme guy.
Ah, that's true. I think I might have a conversation with him at some point.
Yeah, Bill very much cares about this sport. Some
think he
people don't
does.
really realize that, even though he runs a meme page.
He's
He
much
does.
smarter than he presents himself, I think.
Yes, he does. Mike, is there any kind of last minute or last thoughts or statements you'd like to make before we get this one ended for today?
Yeah, man. We've been talking for a while, and I said it before, and I want to say it again. I hope, and listen, first of all, thank you for doing this, because this is your service to the community. This is your service to the shooting sports by giving me and hopefully other guys like me the platform that you have. You have a reach. You're allowing people to hear our ideas. So thank you. The other thing is that, whoever's going to vote in this election, vote not on the personality, vote on the ideas, vote on the plan. Don't vote for more of the same. I mean, vote for whatever you want, but if you're looking for change, look at the ideas. Don't make it a personality contest. Make it a contest of ideas. And study my or read my campaign. See what resonates with you.
Absolutely. And I guys, like we've said again, vote with your opinion, but read the facts. Read what they want to run on. Don't be impartial. But I'll read it again. If you want to leave Mike an email, go to contact@makeuspsagreatagain.com. Email him, send him your questions. I know if Mike gets plenty of questions, I'll bring him back on.
I got a few, yes.
Excellent. And if you manny.things@yahoo.com, send me your questions. I will be more than happy to ask Mike those questions again, bring him back on, ask any other candidate I bring on. I do have plans to bring more candidates on. As I know, I finally have some of a short list of people who are running. So I do plan on reaching out to them and say, hey, you're more than welcome to come on. We can talk about your ideas. And I don't know necessarily if I can get a round table of people to do this due to scheduling conflicts, but I'm more than willing to bring multiple candidates on and get their opinions and choose the right guy for you. And we got to make the right decisions if we want this sport to go how we want it is. So just think of it like that, guys. There's a lot of different things going on in this election, more than just picking who's going to run our organization.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, go ahead, guys, like, comment, share, subscribe, all those good things. But yeah. I greatly appreciate everybody listening. Until next time, get out and do the things.
Thanks, Manny.